on you every time you walk in the set, or maybe it's like a chain. Overnight, this interview that Donald Trump did with Russian television, when he said it's unlikely that in his mind that the Russians were meddling and trying to meddle in the U.S. election with that cyber attack. Then you have Republicans like Lindsey Graham say things like this. Other than destroying every instrument of democracy in his country, having opposition people killed, dismembering neighbors through military force, and being the benefactor of the butcher of Damascus, he's a good guy. I think you can tell Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator, is clearly joking here. Are you hoping that Donald Trump is joking as well in his support of who's a good guy?
No, look, I think Donald Trump is speaking sort of in a generic sense that, the war on terror is a worldwide effort. And if it's possible to get allies, even if it's Russia against ISIS, it's something good. And let's not forget that this gives the Trump campaign, like me, an opportunity to always pivot to Hillary Clinton, who made it a formal policy of the State Department to have a Russian reset to mend our relationship with Vladimir Putin and the past president.
Why put the two things in the same sentence? Why not say, I disagree with how President Obama has handled our foreign policy, and also just, why do you have to say anything about the strength or weakness of Vladimir Putin?
This is month number, 10 now, where we finally have to realize that Donald Trump speaks a little bit different than sort of the political diplomatic language that we've often seen before, and that's part of the reason why people like him.
Speaks a little bit different than what we have heard. That is absolutely true.
Understatement of the year.
Understatement of the day. It changes every. Don't set the bar too high. But here's the question, and maybe I'm missing something. In what universe, though, is this helping him? Who is this helping him with, Rebecca? Tell me.
What's really interesting, Kate, is that there was actually some polling done by The Economist and YouGov, Putin's favorability among Americans, and because this has been a persistent issue.
Right.
And in 2014, very low. I think it was negative 66 among Republicans. Now, net favorability closer to negative 20. And so Donald Trump is kind of bringing Republicans along with him as opposed to responding from signals from them. And so I'm not saying that it's helping him necessarily, but it's a really interesting trend that we're seeing. His whole brand politically is strength. And so that's what he's trying to project here. He likes Putin because he's a strong leader. Donald Trump says he will be a strong leader. I don't think it's necessarily helpful, though, because most people on both sides of the aisle are going to be saying that they think Putin is not a strong leader, not a good leader for his people.
Right.
And it's hard when you have all of those political headwinds working against you. So far, Donald Trump has shown he's very strong.
Well, and Hillary Clinton sure seems to think that no matter what, she thinks it's a great issue for her, Peter. Why is she jumping on this so much?
Well, think about what he's saying here, right? In what way is Vladimir Putin strong? The Russian economy has actually been terrible, right? Russia's been going backwards economically. It's not a thriving country. What he means by strength, essentially, is that he's a man who does not respect the rule of law, right? He's willing to basically do whatever he wants to stay in power and get what he wants done, right? This would be kind of amusing if it weren't for the fact that Donald Trump himself has shown so little respect for the rule of law in our own country, right? A guy who attacks judges, a guy who has said some very menacing things about the press, threatened to go after the owner of the Washington Post because he doesn't like the Washington Post coverage of him, a guy who has, where there's been violence at his rallies consistently, someone who's told the military to torture and violate international law. So it's not a surprise that Donald Trump kind of worships strength, but our political system is based on something fundamentally different than that. It's based on the idea that there are restraints on the strength of international people, of powerful people, because we follow something called the rule of law. I don't think Trump gets that very much.
You know what I find just a little bit fun? If we all can just take a pause and take a momentary walk down memory lane with you, Russ. You see how bad Putin is described right now? Do you remember when Mitt Romney was trashed at every turn when he was asked, when he said that Russia is our number one geopolitical foe, and Democrats, they lit their hair on fire saying he was absolutely ridiculous and he was ridiculed.
Sure.
Where's the apology coming from Democrats now?
Sure. Well, and that was one of the things that Governor Romney did in the third debate against President Obama. They ridiculed him, and it turned out it was one of the things that a lot of fact checkers a year later and 2 years later said, you know what, Mitt Romney was right. Russia is our biggest geopolitical foe. But just look at this politically, and this is what I don't get. Either Donald Trump is saying these things because he means them, in which case it's really scary. Peter was saying that this is somebody who is he is strong because he is a dictator.
Right.
We do not like dictators
Right.
in our country. Or he's saying them because he's ignorant. And that, I don't know which one is scarier. It's because he's doing it on purpose or he's doing it because he's ignorant. And then go back to your initial question, how does this help him politically? does this help with white suburban women? Does this kind of, give him more wiggle room with them in order to change their minds? Does it help him with Hispanics? Does it even
definitely won't help him with the LGBT community, considering the record that Vladimir Putin has with the LGBT
and I don't
community in
even
his
know if
country.
this helps him with his base, with his, white middle-class base.
Does this help him with his base, though? The conspiracy theory that just won't quit, the birther conspiracy. Was President Obama born in this country? Now his campaign manager and everyone kind of around him is saying, yes, Donald Trump believes now that President Obama was born in this country after pushing that conspiracy for so long. Why isn't Donald Trump saying it, though? Do you want to hear him come out and say it?
Well, I don't think he's been asked in a formal interview whether he says it or not. No, I'm saying within the past 2 weeks since Rudy Giuliani made a statement and Kellyanne Conway.
But when did he change his opinion? When did he change his opinion?
That's a good question, but I guess the opinion is
you would like to see him come out and say that?
Yeah, I think the case is pretty clear now that President Obama was born in the U.S. But again, this goes back to the same pivot that we debate ad nauseum, not just in this table, but amongst many people, whether or not this actually came from Hillary Clinton's circle.
It did not.
Except that PolitiFact in August 29th of this year said that that's mostly true.
Okay.
No.
They said they're supporters.
There were people
But don't go back to that.
Who got fired from the campaign?
Hillary Clinton,
Who got
but
fired
there's no
from the campaign?
evidence that it came from the campaign itself. And they were fired.
Yes,
That's
from the
people,
campaign.
They were fired.
You can't say
it's pretty different than a guy.
You can't say there's people in the campaign who didn't do that.
That's a guy that's pretty different from the candidate himself making this a crusade year after year.
That's a fair point.
Go to your corner.
Ding, ding,
ding. Zachy, I was just going to do that. Coming up, Hillary Clinton's campaign suggests that she's pressing the pause button on personal attacks against Donald Trump. But is the trash talking really over? I know. I'd be upset as well. This is all this election's about. The panel will weigh in.
Hello, good morning. This is Breakfast with Louise Minchin and Dan Walker.
The main news today, Donald Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, has resigned over his contacts with Russia.
General Flynn discussed American sanctions with the Russian ambassador before Mr. Trump took office and is accused of misleading the vice president about what happened. Here's our Washington correspondent, David Willis.
Barely 3 weeks into his presidency, Donald Trump has lost one of his closest advisors. Retired Army General Michael Flynn, a man renowned for his close ties to Russia, resigned amid allegations that he misled senior officials about conversations between him and the Russian ambassador a few weeks before the Trump administration took office. In his resignation letter, Mr. Flynn said that as the incoming national security advisor, he held numerous phone calls with foreign counterparts, ministers and ambassadors. Unfortunately, he goes on, because of the fast pace of events, I inadvertently briefed the vice president-elect and others with incomplete information regarding my calls with the Russian ambassador. Missing, it appears, from Mr. Flynn's account was a discussion of sanctions imposed by the outgoing Obama administration in response to Russia's meddling in the US election. Any offer to lift such sanctions by a member of the incoming administration would be a breach of American law. Meanwhile, it's emerged that the US Justice Department warned the Trump administration several weeks ago that Mr. Flynn's account of the conversation differed from that of intelligence officials who were listening in. The department also advised the president that Mr. Flynn had potentially left himself open to blackmail by the Russians. All of which prompts the broader question: what did the president himself know about Michael Flynn's activities, and when did he know it? David Willis, BBC News, Washington.
Mr. President, you've said before that torture works. You've praised Russia. You've said you want to ban some Muslims from coming to America. You've suggested there should be punishment for abortion. For many people in Britain, those sound like alarming beliefs. What do you say to our viewers at home who are worried about some of your views and worried about you becoming the leader of the free world?
This was your choice of a question. There goes that relationship.
On the issue that you raised with me, Laura, can I confirm that the President, I've been listening to the President and the President has been listening to me. That's the point of having a conversation and a dialogue. And we have been discussing a number of topics. We'll carry on after this press conference meeting and discussing a number of other topics. And there will be times when we disagree and issues on which we disagree. The point of the special relationship is that we are able to have that open and frank discussion so that we are able to make that clear when it happens. But I'm clear also that there are many issues on which the United Kingdom and the United States stand alongside one another, many issues on which we agree. And I think, as I said yesterday in my speech, that we are at a moment now when we can build an even stronger special relationship, which will be in the interests not just of the UK and the United States, but actually in the interests of the wider world as well.
Very good. We have a great general who has just been appointed Secretary of Defense, General James Mattis, and he has stated publicly that he does not necessarily believe in torture or waterboarding, or however you want to define it. Enhanced interrogation, I guess, would be a word that a lot of people would like to use. I don't necessarily agree, but I would tell you that he will override because I'm giving him that power. He's an expert. He's highly respected. He's the general's general. Got through the Senate very, very quickly, which in this country is not easy, I will tell you. And so I'm going to rely on him. I happen to feel that it does work. I've been open about that for a long period of time. But I am going with our leaders. And we're going to win with or without. But I do disagree. As far as, again, Putin and Russia, I don't say good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know the gentleman. I hope we have a fantastic relationship. That's possible, and it's also possible that we won't. We will see what happens. I will be representing the American people very, very strongly, very forcefully. And if we have a great relationship with Russia and other countries, and if we go after ISIS together, which has to be stopped, that's an evil that has to be stopped, I will consider that a good thing, not a bad thing. How the relationship works out, I won't be able to tell you that later. I've had many times where I thought I'd get along with people, and I don't like them at all. And I've had some where I didn't think I was going to have much of a relationship, and it turned out to be a great relationship. So, Teresa, we never know about those things, do we? But I will tell you one thing. I'll be representing the American people very strongly. Thank you.